I'd just like to thank you all for being here today. And I'm just going to give a brief overview of the project before we get really down to the nitty-gritty. So in recent years, researchers have found strong evidence to support that there's a relationship between hearing loss and dementia. For one, hearing loss may be a risk factor for dementia, may speed up the progression, and or may worsen the symptoms, dementia is incurable, but hearing loss can be treated. As such, treating hearing loss in individuals with dementia may benefit them. Therefore, we wanted to survey medical professionals to observe whether they were making recommendations for hearing assessments to individuals with dementia. So today I will be discussing the literature concerning the relationship between the two conditions, and then the study we completed in response to the literature. So first I'm going to go over the definition, effects, prevalence of dementia. So what is it? Well, dementia is a syndrome, and a syndrome is a group of symptoms. So dementia is not necessarily a disorder, but it's a group of symptoms that characterize other disorders. The most common dementia disorder is Alzheimer's disease, and so a person with Alzheimer's disease would have dementia as like a group of symptoms to characterize that disorder. It's a neurodegenerative syndrome that affects cognition. Neurodegenerative means a progressive decline of the brain, neuro being brain, degenerative being progressive decline. To be considered as having dementia, two core cognitive processes must be significantly impaired. One of these is almost always memory. So memory loss, and then another one could be communication and language, ability to focus and pay attention, reasoning and judgment, and visual perception. So dementia is acquired, progressive, and incurable, and I'll break one of these each down really briefly. So acquired means that it develops after birth. So in other words, a baby is not born with dementia. It is progressive, so it's a steady decline. Well, it can be a quick decline too, it just depends. But it's a progressive decline, and it's documented in 7 stages, the first being no cognitive impairment, and the 7th stage being very severe cognitive impairment. And then third, it's incurable, which is one of the most important aspects. As of now, there is no cure for dementia, and as such, it's important to find other avenues through which we might be able to slow its progression or reduce its symptoms. So, and then overall, all of these aspects contribute to a reduced capacity for independence. Individuals with dementia cannot complete daily tasks, for example, dressing, eating, and bathing. And as we know, eating is necessary for living, so, and among other things. And so therefore, due to this reduced capacity for independence, they need others to help them. And this reduction in independence and the fact that there is no cure is the main reason that it's so necessary to find ways to reduce the effects or slow its progression. Okay, so the primary risk factor for dementia is aging. It primarily affects individuals age 65 and over. After the age of 65, the risk of developing dementia nearly doubles every 5 years. And as mentioned previously, Alzheimer's disease, the most common form of dementia, is the most common form of dementia. And that is the 6th leading cause of death in America in general, and the 5th leading cause of death in individuals age 65 and over. And it is also the only top 10 of cause of death in America that is not curable. So as we can see, the prevalence of dementia is high, and it's expected to increase. So in the US, Alzheimer's disease, or AD, affects approximately 5.7 million individuals, and someone develops the disease every 65 seconds. By 2050, it's expected that someone will develop AD every 33 seconds. And then worldwide, there are approximately 50 million individuals living with some form of dementia. And then by 2050, this number is expected to increase to 135.5 million. And this increase may be attributed to the fact that more individuals are living longer. So in general, the life expectancy is increasing, and so more individuals can get to 85, 90. And as we know, by that time, the risk of developing dementia is very high. So next, I'm going to be discussing the definition, effects, and prevalence of hearing loss. And this shouldn't take as long because hearing loss is a bit more well known. So hearing loss overall is a reduction in the ability to hear. It ranges in severity from no hearing impairment to profound hearing impairment, which is also known as deafness. And then presbycusis is also known as age-related hearing loss, and it's hearing loss caused by aging, so aging of the structures in the ear. So the effects of hearing loss. Hearing loss severely impacts quality of life. It's been shown that individuals with hearing loss are more likely to have a hearing handicap, depression, and communication difficulties. A hearing handicap refers to individuals not being able to complete activities because of their hearing. And then individuals with dementia also have communication difficulties, as I mentioned previously. So the similarity in symptoms between the two can often make the two appear similar, and it can be difficult to determine the diagnosis. So for example, if an individual has dementia, someone may believe that they only have hearing loss, which of course can have pretty severe implications if that dementia is not being treated in some way well through other modes like hearing loss. So that's another reason that we wanted to conduct this study. And then also, individuals with hearing loss have a reduced independence due to the fact that hearing loss impacts their ability to complete activities of daily living. So just as with dementia, aging is a significant risk factor for hearing loss. Presbycusis primarily affects individuals aged 65 and over. 1 in 3 Americans age 65 and over, and 2 in 3 Americans age 75 and over have some degree of hearing loss. Okay. And then, so we know that older individuals are more likely to be affected by dementia or hearing loss. And then, however, only in recent years have researchers started to observe a relationship between the two. So I will be discussing this relationship next. Okay. So there's been shown to be a high prevalence of comorbidity between hearing loss and dementia in older individuals. Comorbidity is when 2 chronic disorders are present in the same individual. And because there's a high prevalence of comorbidity, we believe it's important to assess the relationship between the two. And then one important aspect of this relationship is that hearing loss may be a risk factor for dementia. A possible explanation for this association is based on strong evidence that hearing loss increases cognitive decline, speeds up cognitive decline. And it's been shown that as hearing loss increases in severity, memory function decreases. So, and as we know, memory is the primary cognitive process that is affected in individuals with dementia. So we're wondering, how might hearing loss contribute to cognitive decline? And one mode may be social isolation. This is one of the most supported connections. So social isolation in general is a lack of contact with other individuals. It can be measured subjectively or objectively. Subjective social isolation refers to an individual feeling socially isolated. And then objective is when someone is actually socially isolated. And it's been found that individuals with hearing loss have been shown to be more subjectively and objectively socially isolated than their peers without hearing loss. And additionally, individuals with hearing loss are likelier to report feelings of loneliness, and having smaller social networks than their typically hearing peers. So feeling lonely may be a symptom of social isolation, and having a small social network may make an individual more prone to social isolation. So then we want to know, of course, why hearing loss, social isolation, and dementia connect. As I mentioned, hearing loss may contribute to cognitive decline through the mode of social isolation. So we are going to look at how social isolation then affects individuals with dementia. So for one, it's been shown that individuals with a higher number of social networks, in other words, this could be like friends and family, and a higher level of social engagement have stronger cognitive skills than their peers who have lower levels of social engagement and smaller social circles. Additionally, having both resources simultaneously slows the rate of cognitive decline. So having a higher number of social networks reduces the rate of decline by about 39%, and high social engagement reduces decline by about 91%. So this may indicate that while social networks are beneficial, social interaction with those networks is needed to be more beneficial. So, and then additionally, just another quick little connection, individuals who have depression and dementia are more likely to experience irritability and social isolation than individuals who have dementia but not depression. And then this indicates that depression may also play a role in contributing to social isolation in individuals with dementia. Okay, so we know that there's a relationship between the two, and we know that hearing loss may contribute to cognitive decline through the mode of social isolation. And while dementia may not have a cure, hearing loss can be treated. So therefore, we believe early detection and treatment of hearing loss may help prevent the risk, slow the progression, or reduce the impact of the effects of dementia. Recent research has shown that hearing aid use has been associated with improved cognitive performance in individuals with dementia. Additionally, treating hearing loss may reduce its detrimental effects on working memory. So, okay. Then we go to our study. So we wanted to take what we knew about the relationship and how treating hearing loss can benefit individuals with dementia, and we wanted to see, we had these two questions in mind. We wanted to know, in general, what recommendations physicians or medical professionals are making for individuals diagnosed with dementia. And then more specifically, we wanted to know if they are recommending hearing screenings to individuals diagnosed with dementia, because in order to be treated, you have to be assessed and diagnosed. So our methods, I will go over our methods. So our participants were medical professionals in California, Illinois, and Indiana, and we were specifically looking at individuals who had some experience working with individuals with dementia, and then more specifically diagnosing and making referrals, but we considered all working with dementia. Our survey was designed to obtain information on demographics of medical professionals regarding a practice setting, education, and experience with dementia. And then we wanted to collect information regarding the primary recommendations to individuals with dementia and their families. So what we had them do was the participants would complete a short survey, and we kept it short to ensure that individuals filled it all out, and then also that they would want to fill it out. So we had a short paper survey that were delivered to medical professionals by undergraduate and graduate students, and they just would go to their place of work, and the medical professionals would either fill them out then and then get them picked up, or they would fill them out later and mail them in, or fill them out later and get picked up by students later. So then the students would take that data from the paper copies and then put it into Qualtrics. And then Qualtrics and Microsoft Excel were used to analyze the data. Okay, so we had a total of 88 medical professionals respond, and 69 of those were involved in some way with dementia. And so those results from their surveys are what are going to be looked at next for the results. So we found overall that for recommendations in general, 16 or 23% recommended a hearing screening, or at least reported recommending a hearing screening. So we don't know for sure that they even are actually recommending, we just know that they're reporting it. So this number could be even smaller in terms of whether they're actually making the recommendation. And then 16 or 23% recommended speech therapy. And then our ranking of recommendations. So we found that 1 considered hearing assessment to be in the top 3 priority of recommendations. 2 ranked a communication or linguistics assessment in the top 3, and 2 ranked speech therapy in the top 3. So based on these, we wanted to, based on this information, it suggests that very few physicians are making recommendations for hearing screenings to individuals with dementia or are reporting it. And even fewer consider hearing assessment to even be a priority recommendation. And then also that very few are recommending communication or linguistics assessments, swallowing assessments, or speech therapy. So overall, we believe this suggests that there is a gap between research and practice. So we have plenty of research showing that there's a relationship and that treating hearing loss could benefit individuals with dementia. And then over here we have evidence suggesting that there's very little implementation of that research into practice by medical professionals. So some future directions, we would like to continue to survey physicians, medical professionals in additional states. More is always better in terms of research for subjects. And then another potential study would be to determine practice patterns in memory care units, assisted living facilities of those sorts, where individuals with dementia go when they can no longer care for themselves. And some questions that we would look at are newly admitted individuals screened for hearing loss. So if physicians are doing it, if medical professionals aren't doing it here, then are they getting it later? They could still be getting caught at this stage. And then is existing hearing loss documented and considered in rehabilitation treatments? So if they are screening it, are they doing anything about it? And then we want to know what % of residents have hearing loss, and that could also help kind of look at the comorbidity between the two and see, how often they co-occur. And then, of course, to advocate for regular hearing screenings for the population. One of the primary resources given to individuals with dementia and their families is a referral to the Alzheimer's Association website. And as of now, there is no information regarding hearing loss, hearing screening, speech-language pathologist, audiologist, and an audiologist is someone who works with individuals with hearing loss. And so putting something like that on the website would be of great benefit to pushing in the right direction for education for these individuals. And then one of our primary limitations was a small number of subjects. As always, more subjects is better. And then in conclusion, we know that dementia and hearing loss affect quality of life. And then we know that the effects complicate each other. So we also know that treating may benefit individuals with dementia. And then also we know that medical professionals may not be making recommendations. So we would like to obviously push for them to start doing that. But yeah, that is it.
So you said that hearing loss has an effect on dementia, but does that include the ones that are severe or profoundly deaf, or have a severe or profound hearing loss that use ASL as a mode of communication and have strong social interactions?
That is a great question. I would say because of, I would say, so you're saying like that is social isolation, so you're saying is hearing loss going to impact people in the same way as individuals? Yeah, so I would say based on the research, no, but of course we would have to we'd have to conduct studies to determine this, just because social isolation is one of the primary components, and if an individual is participating in language, because ASL is a language just as much as any other, so if an individual is participating with their social circles with ASL, then they're going to have just as much social interaction as another individual without hearing loss. So, sorry. So yeah, I would say that it would not impact in the same way. But of course, we'd have to conduct research to really determine if that's the case.
So thank you so much for your presentation. I found it really interesting. This whole thing about the gap between research and practice, and I think that's very interesting. And I wondered if you had any, and this is a little bit beyond the scope of your research, but if you had any hypotheses about, why there is this gap. I mean, does it have something to do with kind of the specialties of the professions, or with time, or maybe it's a number of factors? I'd just be interested in your reflections on why you think this is happening.
Yeah, great question. I think with anything that there are multiple factors contributing to something, but I would say that a primary thing is that they just don't have time. So that's kind of one thing, is that it's very difficult to keep up on all this research that is coming out. I mean, I had to dedicate a lot of time to looking at this research and coming to these conclusions or suggestions of a conclusion. So I just believe that, medical professionals and everyone, when they're in their field, they're very busy with practicing, that it could be very difficult to keep up on the research. So I would believe that that's probably the primary reason. But of course, as with anything, research would help to really answer that question. But that would be my guess.
Since it seems that social interaction is the key factor that connects the hearing loss and the dementia, and presumably that's just because they can't talk with others, hear others talking to them, do you think this will be less of an issue when the current generation reaches that age where dementia usually kicks in, because current generations socialize more through social media and not talking with one another so much? Do you think hearing loss would be less of an issue in 30, 40 years?
That is a really good question. I think, I'm not really sure. I think that social media definitely could have an impact in improving social interaction and kind of decreasing social isolation, because that's true. It's an interaction just as much as any other kind. But part of what I've sort of seen when I've been looking at the research is that what could be part of the social isolation aspect is that you need to be talking because of auditory deprivation. So if you're not getting those signals going to your brain, then you're not going to be working your cognition as much, because you need to use cognition for everything. And so if you're but that's the same for reading too. I mean, you need to use, so that's a great question. I'm not really sure, but that could be very interesting to see. So.
It kind of goes back to Anne's question a few minutes ago about the research practice gap. I'm curious as to whether you feel like there's almost kind of like a siloing in these different medical professions, where people who focus on helping patients with dementia are so focused on the brain and neurology and all the other kind of stuff that they don't necessarily communicate with people like audiologists and people who work on that. And do you have any suggestions or ways you can think about better communication between the medical fields to maybe help with this kind of issue?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was a really good question. That's Yeah, that's such a huge factor is a lack of professional like communication. That's so true that they are so focused on. Well, we believe that they're so focused on dementia they don't even think about hearing loss as something because that's not what they work with. And so, some suggestions that I would have for increasing communication between the two, or really any. I'm not really sure. I mean, it was, yeah, the research for sure. I think including information on like Alzheimer's Association website because the medical professionals, I mean, that's quick for everyone. It's right there, just one little website you go to, and then you can see like the information that you're looking for, very like easily summarized. So I think including that, would be beneficial for not only the people that they're recommending that information to, but for the people who are recommending the information. So I think getting it out there so our research of course would be beneficial, but we need to, I think, make it maybe a bit more accessible for individuals and put it on a platform where they can, see it more easily. So perhaps that could kind of influence people to maybe, hopefully, contact, experts in the field about it. But, yeah.
Thank you, Jenna. This was very interesting. So I have two questions. One, I'm sorry if I missed it. You said there's only, based on the data that you've collected, not too many physicians have responded, correct? Or acted on the treatment. So where was the research conducted? Like, is it in the region here, or is it which physicians? And does it differ from, if you did it in this region, does it differ from a different place? Would it have different statistics? The second part, what is the next part after this part of the research? What are the next steps for you?
Okay. So to answer the first question, so we haven't looked at, I don't think we've looked too much at exactly like regional differences, but that would be really interesting to look at. We did have a difference in like how many came from each region. So what we did was we have information from the Fort Wayne area. We have information from Governors State University, Eastern Illinois University, and then California State University, Los Angeles. So that's where we kind of like, it's all kind of in those surrounding areas. So that's where we got our information from. That's where we surveyed medical professionals. But we haven't looked at the regional differences. So that would be very interesting to look at. So yeah. And then I'm sorry, what was your second question? The next step. So we would like to look at people in healthcare facilities, like so where individuals with dementia go when they can no longer like care for themselves and caregivers cannot care for them any longer. And we would like to look and see, kind of like very similar to here, we want to see are they, except rather than recommendations, we want to see if they are screening and then if they're acting on that and putting it into their rehabilitation treatments or that was redundant, but their rehabilitation plans and things like that. So.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We can clap.
You don't have to.